Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Bianca Castellanos. I'm the director of the Institute for Advanced Study, and I'm really excited to be with you all today to host the information session for the Mellon Foundation's Call for Concepts. Before we get started in the details of the call, what I did want to do is first is give you an overview of the Mellon's mission for higher learning, just to give you a little bit of background of why the three foci that they include in the concept are important to pay attention to. So the Mellon's mission for higher learning states that it wants to nurture advanced humanistic inquiry and social justice by doing four things. One, broadening our understanding of American history and culture. Two, developing the interpretive tools and methods scholars use to create meaning. Three, supporting faculty and students whose work exemplifies a drive toward greater equity in their fields and institutions. And four, promoting pathways for those seeking to exercise transformative and academic leadership. And so these four tenets, I think, are really important to pay attention to as you think about the themes that the Mellon is focusing on this round. And those themes include cultures of U.S. democracy, environmental justice studies, social justice, and disciplinary knowledge. Abby, can you go to the next slide, please? And so if you think about the four tenets that they talk about that are important or crucial to their emphasis on humanistic inquiry and social justice, you should also bear in mind that Mellon actually discusses strategies for guiding how you would put together a grant proposal on those topics. And so there are a few key points that they discuss. So they say it's important to think about, for example, they're interested in funding complete and accurate narratives of the human experience that lay the foundation for more just and equitable futures. So if you're thinking about your project, it's important to think about how the work that you're doing is going to speak not just to the themes listed here, but also to these strategic guidelines. The Mellon Foundation also asks that you think about amplifying perspectives and contributions that have been marginalized within the conventional scholarly record and to promote the realization of a more socially just world. They're also interested in accelerating the demographic transformation of U.S. academic faculties and institutional leadership to better reflect the population while centering humanities expertise. So that means that they would support, for example, professional advancement and mentoring programs for established humanities faculties. They're also interested in creating equitable, broader access to humanities higher learning opportunities. And that, for example, would mean basically striving to ensure that all post-secondary students have access to a viable and rewarding path in the humanities. And so they give examples, for example, of specific initiatives like the Higher Education in Prisms program. So as you think about these three themes that they're highlighting, culture of U.S. democracies, environmental justice studies, and social justice and disciplinary knowledge, think about those strategic guidelines and how they might actually help you craft a proposal that would not only speak to these themes, but also consider these guidelines that they've listed in on their website. So the three themes, culture of U.S. democracies, the first one it includes projects that consider the circumstantial conditions that enable U.S. democratic practices to flourish, including how those can best be achieved, nurtured, and sustained within an increasingly complex and fractured society. The environmental justice theme focuses on projects that focus on specific systems such as food, water, or health, ones that engage interrelated systems in a given community or locale, and ones that come at this topic through discrete analytical or disciplinary lenses. And finally, the theme of social justice and disciplinary knowledge is really interested in projects that best exemplify how specific disciplinary or interdisciplinary fields of study are equipped to reckon with issues of social justice, given the particular investigative and analytical methods they deploy. And we're happy to have a conversation with you if you have ideas that you're not quite sure if they match up with these themes in the ways that Mellon would like you to envision them. We can give an example of the last round. So the last call that Mellon did in 2022, the project that was funded was called Remapping the Shetichakowanoyate Orature as a Deep Mapping. And that project was focused on building a digital humanities map of that focused on oral histories and naming and storytelling around Oshitishikoan traditions and practices, and that maps and that would create a digital map that would basically connect regions that might have been carved up or separated due to state lines and other forms of institutional demarcations. So if that's just an example of the kind of project they're interested in supporting. And there are others that you can find on their website. Addie, can you go to the next slide, please? So in terms of who is eligible for the call, these are some of the I mean, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. In terms of funding, just be aware that you can apply for a grant between 250,000 to 500,000 over the duration of 3 years. The last grant that was funded in 2022, I believe, was for 500,000. The two campuses that are eligible are Duluth and Twin Cities, and each campus can submit up to 3 applications. So we will be holding, competition to review the applications, and we will forward 3 applications for each campus. And our review committee includes faculty from other campuses as well. So we want to make sure that we have as much coverage as possible. And you can find all other information about the deadlines on our website, there, z.umn.edu//melloncfc. Abby, the next slide, please. So for those of you who are here, this is a really important slide to pay attention to because it speaks to who is eligible to participate in this call. And I forgot to mention that the IAS is running this call, so we will be running the internal review process. So those of you who are eligible to apply are tenure track or tenured faculty members or deans in a program or department of the humanities or humanistic social sciences. This does not mean that if you're not part of the humanities or humanistic social science that you can't apply. It just means that you can't be the PI. So the principal investigator must be from the humanities or humanistic social sciences. And you have to be based either at Duluth or the Twin Cities. And programs that are also eligible are architecture, musicology, performance studies, and others that might fall into a professional college, but they incorporate humanities-based perspectives and methodologies. The programs or schools that are not eligible are medical schools and centers and other health professional schools, engineering and other technology-related schools, business and management schools, arts, music, and design schools, law schools, and seminaries or seminary-like institutions. And we apologize, these are not our guidelines. And so if you're not able to participate from those schools, you might want to consider partnering with a humanities scholar or a scholar in the humanistic social sciences. And now I'm going to pass it on to Juliet Burba, who will speak about the rest of the call and our internal review process.
Hi, everybody. Abby, could you go to the next slide? So I'm going to talk about the process. Some of you might remember the process from the last call, which was in 2022. This one is a little bit different, not a lot different, but a little bit different because we have a lot more time. That last call, I think we had maybe a month. It was very short, and there's more time, fortunately, this time around. So this is just a quick overview here. And I'll go into detail in a moment. The first step is getting registered with the Mellon Foundation. The second will be submitting your concept to the IAS. Those that are selected will then get submitted to the Mellon Foundation in step 3. And the way that I guess we kind of monitor this or gatekeep this is that the concepts that get submitted have to have a letter of endorsement from the provost or the chancellor, and we're organizing those. And then the step 4, which we won't really talk about here today, but I just want to mention it because it is the last step of the process. And that is if you're invited to submit a full proposal to the Mellon Foundation, that would happen over the summer of 2024. Okay, next slide, please. So for step 1, if you think that you may want to apply for this, be absolutely sure that you get registered by the deadline, which is Thursday, November 30th at 2 p.m. Central Time. And if you don't get registered, then you can't apply for this call. What that will do is they're using that to essentially weed out people who wouldn't be eligible, but then also to get people set up to access their flux system, which is the way that grants and other things or proposals and other things are submitted to them. And so of course those instructions are on our website. Could you go to the next slide? And so this is an example of some of the things that you will find on our website up in that area. That's what you'll see. There are links to two important things. One is the information. You see that on the right of the slide. There's a document that provides the information that you need to get registered. Pretty much everything you need to get registered will be on that, except, of course, you have to decide which of the three categories your proposal falls under. I saw a question asking if an application can target all three. They make you choose one of three in this process of registering. You don't have to know, you don't have to have a title or anything for your project, but you do need to be able to say what area it falls under. And then there's more information in the guidelines about that registration process. I think once you're in it, it's pretty straightforward, but without that sheet of information, it might be a little bit confusing as to what the answers are. That sheet will give you all the information you need. And if you have trouble getting registered, let me know. Next, and then a question, can multiple folks from your group register if you're not yet sure who's the PI? You know, that's a good idea. I haven't seen, I've actually wondered whether the Mellon Foundation would prefer not to be overwhelmed by registrations, but they haven't indicated that that's the case. So I would say if you're not sure, because once you register, that PI is locked in. So I think if there's a question as to who might be PI, it's maybe a good idea to have more than one register. But, you know, we can also talk about it. We could contact the Mellon Foundation. So if you have any, if you want to follow up with me, we can talk that through too. And then you can change your mind. Of course, you cannot register. I mean, we will have more people registering. You have to be registered in order to apply. But if we have too many applicants, only 3 from each institution can go through to the Mellon Foundation. So there will be people who are registered who are not applying. Okay. Excuse me, next slide. So get registered by November 30th. And then what you do is you submit your concept to the IAS. And this is through InfoReady. And this is essentially a draft of what you're going to be submitting, or what you would submit to the Mellon Foundation if it's chosen to move forward. It will be going through a process of review by the selection committee. So, I would say put everything you can into it. And they're really quite short. They're 8,000 characters. The Mellon Foundation calls that about 1,000 words. I think it could be maybe a little bit more than 1,000 words. There's a budget description that's needed, but there's no actual budget. It really is a brief. There's an estimate of what you would need in that range of 250 to 500,000. And then there's just a description of like what categories of expenses. And at this stage, that's really all that they want. And then we will put that through the selection committee process, and we will notify people by February 1st. If theirs will move forward, and we will arrange for the necessary letter of endorsement. Susanna, would you like to show the InfoReady form?
Yes.
Is that possible?
To do so. Can you give me screen share? Oh, you have to stop. No, there we go. Okay. Let's try this. Okay. I assume you can see the screen that shows funding opportunities at the Institute for Advanced Study. So when you click on the link, it'll bring you to this page or bring you to a login page. when you click the login for a UMN person, and then you'll go through the usual internet ID and password thing. And then all you do, and there may be other opportunities here. I hit a few because I have some test things going that would have shown up. But once you get there, again, the outline of what all the stuff that you need, and reminder to register with the Mellon Foundation. So when you want to apply, submit concept up here, click, and it will automatically fill your name and your email address. And again, I'm not logged in as me at work, so you can ignore that email address. So it's real simple. You put in, your title, you decide which project area. Sorry, Michelle, you can only have one, so let's go with social justice. Then there are just two things for you to fill in. The description of your potential project. Excuse me. And of course, I suggest that you write this in advance and just copy and paste in. We are following exactly what Mellon says. They say it should be about, what is it, about 1,000 words, but it's but they're counting they're counting characters. So so you do that, and then how much money do you think you're going to be spending? Just write that in, and then the expenses. We don't need a budget. We do not need a budget. All you need to do is say the kinds of things that you're going to be spending money on. So, course releases, honoraria for community members, stuff to run a workshop, that sort of thing. And then if you want somebody else to be able to, every time that we send an email, it'll go to you, about your application. If you are going to be applying with somebody else, you might want to put their emails in here. And then you just absolutely have to click the box to say that you have registered with Mellon by November 30th. And then you can either save it as a draft or submit your application. So that is it. It's, again, pretty simple.
All right, so let's go back to the slideshow then. We'll go on to the next step. Let's go to the next slide. And I guess the next one. So we talked about how to submit that concept. So at the point where the selection committee has selected the concepts that can go on to the Mellon Foundation, those will be due by February 15th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Between the point at which they were submitted to the IAS for that January 12th deadline to February 15th, they can be revised. I would work with you. We have to be, keep in mind that we're working with the provost or the chancellor to get letters, so we can't revise drastically or anything like that. And we also want to make sure they see what's going in. And then there are two statements that need to be developed and added to, and that is a DEI statement and a statement about the humanities engagement at the institution. And they say that a website link can be provided. In the past, these statements were developed and there was overlap from one to the next, but also they were kind of unique to what the project was and to the department that they were coming from. So, I would encourage you to consider writing your own, and we can work with you on that. But that's really, it's really these first two steps that are the most important. Those that are moving on to get submitted to the Mellon Foundation, we can work with you to get you through that step 3. And that will be February 15th. So there's a lot more time than there was last time. Let's go ahead to the next slide. I think at this point, this is just an overview again of that process. And I very much hope that one of you here gets to that step 4. Yeah, let's go on to the next slide. So I think what I'd like to do is just cover a few things so that I just want to mention again, you've probably heard this multiple times already, but the information that you need is really a lot of it can be found on the IAS website. The IAS website also links to documents at the Mellon Foundation, so you can also go there. And so there's all kinds of information there. The guidelines are available there. And there are a few things in the guidelines that I wanted to just point to. One is that when you apply for, or when you register with the Mellon Foundation, they will give you access to the application form on Flux, they say by Monday, December 11th. So you'll be able to access Flux, but you can't apply because we have to go through this internal review process. So you can't submit the application until we've done that. And again, you couldn't submit it without that letter of endorsement, which is something that the IAS is handling. So I just want to point that out. You might get a notification that you've got access to it, but don't apply. And it probably wouldn't even accept it without that letter of endorsement. There are some points about the budget that I want to mention. And again, they're expecting budgets of around $250,000 to $500,000. $500,000 is the max. Just a note about the start date. Projects projects would start in late 2024 or January 1st, 2025, and it depends on when it was approved. And so they're going to approve them in basically fourth quarter. And so and then once they're approved, the following month is when that project start date is. So it's a pretty fast turnaround compared to some humanities grants. So the thing, a couple points about the budget. Again, the details aren't that important because you don't have to do a very, very detailed budget, but they will not pay. So the Mellon Foundation does not pay overhead or indirect. They will pay up to 10% in administrative costs, but you really have to detail what that is. It's not like a indirect rate like you might get from a federal grant. They won't pay tuition. There is a way for graduate students to be paid, and so we could work with you on that, but they won't pay anything that's labeled tuition. They won't pay for projects that are grounded in the quantitative social sciences or STEM fields. They won't pay for projects with a primarily international focus. There can be comparative projects, but it has to be US oriented content. And they won't pay for K through 12 education. And that they will pay, I believe they will pay for some forms of teacher training, but it's a little bit complicated and tricky. So we would want to talk that through if your project involves K through 12. And I think that's about all I want to mention from the guidelines. The guidelines include a list of eligible fields of study. That list is not exhaustive. They include the email address there. So if you have questions about whether your field would be eligible, you can write them and ask them. And I think that is it. I think maybe at this point we should open it up for questions, unless Bianette and Susanna, you think I've forgotten anything? Okay. Well, let's go ahead and open it up for questions. And I think I have to change the view so I can see if people have hands raised. Who do we have? I think, Marek, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Mhm.
This is a question about eligibility, disciplinary eligibility. I'm a comparative literature scholar, but I'm based at curriculum and instruction. So I'm the only literature person at CNI, and
Mhm.
we are planning to apply as the Center for Climate Literacy, which sort of sits 1 foot in literature, 1 foot in education,
Mhm.
and me serving as a PNI is, are we eligible for this at all?
To me, it sounds like you would be, but it's also enough of a gray area that I wouldn't feel comfortable just sending it in with the assumption that you are. And so in that case, I think it's worth writing to them. So that in the guidelines, that email address is in the guidelines. And I recommend you write to them directly. I mean, I've written
Sure.
them with questions as well, but I think you're best situated to describe what you're doing and why
Makes
you
sense.
to make the case. But I also wouldn't make it, they're gonna be flooded with emails right now, so I would make it really succinct. Because they're just, I wrote them about something and it took days to get a response. So I would say write them very soon.
Yep.
And and keep it really direct.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julia.
Mhm. Other questions? Tasula.
Hi, everyone. I have a similar question, Juliet, because I am in interior design.
Mhm.
So that's, but the department is architecture, landscape architecture, and interior design. So it's a
Mhm.
little bit of a confusion because it says that architecture is eligible, but design schools are not eligible. And then, so the project that I wanted to work with was decolonizing architectural history courses.
Mhm.
And so what do you think? Should I write them or do you think it would go through? I mean, what's your take?
My take is that it would. I mean, decolonizing architecture history seems completely in line with what they're doing. So I don't see, and I think, I think we should look at the the registration form together. I don't know how particular they get about you defining your department. But you're coming from architecture. They say School of Architecture. In that list, what's I think a little bit unclear to me in that list of schools that are ineligible is whether they mean freestanding, like a freestanding medical school, or a free, like it's a little bit vague. So I think it's, I think what you're doing would make sense. Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Mhm.
thank you.
Let me see. Did I miss? Oh, Anurag.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have so I do work that is definitely not US centered and more global or international. So I'm wondering whether there are some examples of projects that were accepted in the past that are comparative but US centered.
Yeah, I myself don't have any, but they have a pretty, if you go into the website, they have a pretty good database of projects, so you could check there. I do know that they are quite US focused. I think not entirely so, but very much so. But I would spend some time on the Mellon Foundation website to see what you can find there. Yeah, okay. I don't know, Susanna and Bianette, are you seeing any that I have missed? Other questions? I don't know, I'm not seeing any hands. Maybe we've covered everything.
You were just so clear.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
In
and if
my-
questions pop up, you can always email us.
Mhm.
We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I just want to, we wanted to make sure to have this session now because I want to encourage everyone to get registered. I see Jenny is asking, could the libraries be a partner on one or more of these projects? Yeah, I think I encourage everyone to note that comment and consider the libraries. Yeah, I think, yeah, Tia, I think that the Mellon Foundation would very much like to see community partner orgs. Absolutely. What they want is for now, they like to have a PI, like one clear lead, because that makes it administratively easier for them. There can be people who are designated as co-PIs, but they really need to have that one person. And so right now it looks like a very much a kind of almost solo project, but ultimately that's not what they're looking for. They just, it's structured that way to keep it administratively simple, I think.
Yeah, wasn't the Chris's project, weren't there 3 PIs on that project, Juliet?
I'm trying to remember if there are 2 or 3. There's a graduate student who's involved very deeply, who maybe you're thinking of as a PI, but there's a PI from another institution, a co-PI, and a sub-award going to that institution. Yeah. Other questions? Did we get all the questions that were in the chat? I hope I've answered everything. I think we have. Yeah, and if not, please don't hesitate to be in touch. Okay. Yeah, we can put that email address in the chat here.
There is one question. Would you recommend that the PI be a tenured professor?
That's a good question. I mean, it has to be, tenure track. I don't know the answer to that. And that is one, yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think it's really seeing the capacity to do the work, and it seems to be really in the project for them, I think. So I wish I had a solid answer, but they don't indicate that a person needs to be tenured. So I doubt they would give a recommendation one way or the other. Yeah, any others? Tenure track, yes, but not tenured. Michelle. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it doesn't.
Faculty.
Pardon?
They have to be faculty.
Yeah, I don't think they have to be tenured faculty, but they need to be tenure track, is my understanding. I think that just having this conversation is making me want a second. I'm gonna look back or even write them just to make absolutely sure. It's funny because on the one hand, sometimes these guidelines seem very, very specific. And then many times I'm so surprised at the giant holes that are in the guidelines. In the past, they've said only the Twin Cities campus could apply. And then, that changed and it became campuses with multiple humanities departments and over 1,000 undergrads. And unfortunately, Morris is just under 1,000 because I thought people from Morris could apply, but then we learned that they were just under 1,000. So, so there's sometimes they're just holes and other times they're very particular. And, I wonder sometimes if the foundation gets tired of being peppered with all these questions, but it's the only way that we can find these things out.
There's
Um,
a question. Can the budget include salary for professors or salary for a project manager position?
So yes, you can include salary for project manager. What they say is course releases for participating faculty. Alternatively, faculty stipends or salary supplements will be considered on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's not, outright salary. It would be course releases and then potentially stipends or salary supplements.
And as for a project manager, you can only spend up to 10% of the grant on administration, and project manager is considered administration. So not a lot of money.
So would that be around 50,000, Susanna?
Yeah, and once you include fringe, that wouldn't be enough for a full-time project manager.
I wonder if there would be a way to frame that person's duty so that it didn't look only administrative. So I think that there could be a way to do that. And, once you get to that point, they work with you on these things. I mean, once you get to the point of actually submitting a proposal, they do work with you. So some of that, I think is negotiable. Other questions? See, I want to make sure I'm not missing any hands. No.
I have a question, Juliet.
Mhm.
If somebody's working with a community organization, what does that normally look like when it comes to budgets?
Well, I want to get Susanna to jump in on this too, because she's been addressing this. And do you mean, what is it like? How does the money go to the community organization? Or do you mean?
Yeah. Yes. How could you funnel money to a community organization if they're a partner?
You can through contracts. I bet Angela can maybe answer this too. Through contracts, through subawards, are kind of the big ways to do this. Yeah, Susanna, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you're going to be working with the community organization. I mean, at the very least, if you're going to be drawing on somebody from a community organization and, they're going to be putting in their time and so forth, you can pay them essentially a stipend or an honorarium for that work. Depending on what the work of the community organization is, you can draw up a contract with that organization to do some of the work, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a subcontract on the grant. That would be something we'd want to work out in the proposal stage. But yeah, it's easy. It can be done.
Thank
I was
you.
about to say it's easy to do, but the university, we've had trouble over the last several years of getting fast payments, but it can happen. It does happen, and it's a good thing to do.
I think this might be a good couple things I want to mention. And one is that, if your project, if your concept goes on to become a full proposal with the Mellon Foundation, and a funded project, the IAS can administer it. We don't have to administer it, but we certainly can, and people have liked working with us on these. And then, I see, thank you, Abby. So the other thing I want to mention is that we also have our own internal call for concepts. It's not nearly on the scale of the Mellon call for concepts, but what it is it's a way for us to engage with potential projects and to work with you to maybe turn them into fundable. And so Abby's put up a slide that shows some of the things that we can do at the IAS. So, if it turns out that the Mellon call for concepts isn't a viable route for what you're doing, consider looking at that IS call for concepts and, you know, working with us, developing a relationship with the IS so we can maybe find other ways for your project to come into fruition. Yeah, okay, thanks for putting that up. Yeah. Anyone else? I don't know if I've missed anything. Let's see. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Bianette, Susanna? Have we covered it all? Should everyone go out and enjoy the last of the fall sunshine?
Yeah. Can just remind everyone to reach out if you have any questions that
Yes.
were unanswered today, or if you have new questions. We're happy to help out.
Mhm.
And if you think you're gonna want to apply, register with Mellon before the 30th of this month. Because
Yes.
if you don't and you submit and we say, yes, we want this, you can't apply. We won't be able to, you won't be able to apply to Mellon if you haven't registered by the 30th.
Mhm. Yep.
Thank you for attending. Great to
Yeah.
see so many of you.
Yeah, thank you all for attending.